Welcome back folks, my name is LastKnownMeal and today we're going to be talking about Elden Ring PC performance. So even though the game itself is nice and I've been enjoying it and I think most people who bought it are enjoying it, the problem is that PC port is just absolutely abysmal for this game. Keep in mind, I did some tests as I was playing the game. I was changing the settings every time I did something, going manually through every single setting out there, changing the lights down, the shadows, the graphics, the textures, turning on VSync, everything, but the frame rate always stays the same. So as you can see actually from this gameplay, the frame rate itself obviously on PC like Elden Ring is capped at 60 frames, which by itself is awful, but at the same time it has a hard time maintaining 60 frames because usually it's going to be in this range between 40 and 60, sometimes even dropping to 30 frames a second. Now as I said, I've tried every single setting out there which I could actually do without going into like Windows settings, because there are some ways you can actually fix the frame rate by going into Nvidia settings, turning on VSync there, or maybe putting on the unlimited cache reserve for the GPU itself. But without it, like just going from the settings themselves, you're not going to see any difference. Actually, if I go and lower everything to low in this game, you can actually see, like in this gameplay, that the trees and like the hills around you are just going crazy. So I don't know what this is. Either could be some LOD transition problems, but as you can see, the game is trying to load in these shadows, and ultimately what you're going to get is that you're gonna have this entire forest and the trees and the hills behind it. They're gonna be like dancing, and that's every time you put the graphics on low. But keep one thing in mind, the frame rate is not going to change. So even if you lower some settings down, like for example, you're gonna be playing around with whatever settings, even if you lower that down, the frame rate of this game is going to change maybe 10-20%. So it's not going to be a noticeable difference, especially because even on low, every single part of the map which was stuttering for me on high was doing the same on low. And this is nothing new, because From Software is incredibly unreliable when it comes to PC ports or even the performance of their games on consoles themselves. And that can be especially problematic if you have a game which relies on focus, which relies on you hitting the button at the exact moment and basically trying to avoid all of these attacks. If you're having a lower frame rate or stuttering, you won't be able to respond to it normally, and that can also result in slower input. So what I noticed is that sometimes when my frame rate is going very low, my input is also gonna go down. And that's a problem, because if I have to do a roll, if I have to do a swing of the sword or whatever to hit that monster and it doesn't do it at this exact moment, you're going to die, because the monster is going to fight back and you're just end up pressing the button, but it doesn't react properly in an input. And that's a problem that I have with this game, is because I love it, it's great, but when you have these like frame rate issues where it's nothing too crazy, but at the same time it can definitely hinder your performance, because it doesn't really affect the objects around you. You can be anywhere on the map, you can be looking at just the open sea with a few hills around, and it's still going to have this frame rate. Now keep in mind, I'm running this game with 3070 Ti, so automatically this GPU should be running this game incredibly well, but it's not doing it. Actually, my friend tested this on 1070 and he was getting similar performance. Now, he especially wasn't able to play in high settings because the frame rate was going down way too much, which of course it's 1070, that GPU is kinda old, but at the same time, it was causing way too many issues for that GPU than it usually should. Now, when you have people who are going into this game with, worse PCs in case of just the components themselves, or they're going into this game with, older components, they're going to honestly have a hard time. And, that needs to be fixed fast. So even from that perspective, like if you have an older PC and you're thinking like maybe I can lower this, well, here you can kind of see how this performs on lowest settings, and it's not good. Like, yeah, the game is fun, but this is not good. You can actually see by these textures and just the overall blurriness of the screen that this is not something you're gonna be playing the game in, really. And this is honestly mostly for like those open like world areas, like if you're going into a dungeon or if you're going to explore like the underworld or something like that. Like the frame rate is still gonna be causing issues, don't get me wrong, but it's going to be much more stable than it is when you're outside, you know, in the open, especially when you're on a horse, etc, etc, which is of course understandable. But when you have a game which has huge monsters, and that's something I cannot show here because it's a spoiler, but when you're fighting a certain monster, and this is a huge monster obviously, every time this monster, or let's say dragon, breathes fire or something like that, it's going to lower the frame rate a lot. And I've noticed that I actually was not able to properly finish this fight because every time I was just having those stutters. Every time I want to attack him, I was having those stutters because you had a lot of things happening on the map at the same time. But of course, as I said today, in the Steam DB info, you actually see in the depot that they are working on something, so we are probably gonna be getting a patch soon. Hopefully this gets fixed fast because you know, it's a good game, but this is, you know, it's hindering performance a little bit too much, and sometimes it can be a little bit problematic, especially again, as I said, in a game like this, having stuttering is definitely not understandable. But it's not surprising from Software because most previous games I played from them had similar issues when it just came to frame rate itself. So yeah, I just wanted to make this video in case you wanted to buy the game and you were not sure how the PC performance is. Yeah, as I said, it's alright, it's nothing special, but it can be a lot better, and I hope it is actually, because when you have a game as popular as this, you want to have the most amount of people have the best experience they can. And that's pretty much it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to tell me down below what do you think about all of this, and don't forget to also smash that like and subscribe button if you enjoy this and you want more. And also huge thanks to my current Patreon supporters. This is LKM signing out, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.